Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Mapool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at two important stories. The first is with reference to Pakistan's fight against terrorism, something of course that Pakistan has been involved with for quite some time now. And this is of course pointing towards the entire history and series of operations that Pakistan Army has conducted against terrorists within Pakistan and elsewhere as well. Of course, the global war on terrorism is also an effort that Pakistan had joined in, especially post the 9/11 attacks. And we've seen that in the aftermath of that, the world has largely seen terrorism and the global war on terrorism with respect to Afghanistan as well. But we're going to be taking a look at the internal security issues that Pakistan still continues to face and for which Pakistan has paid numerous sacrifices in the past with countless operations that have been conducted in major areas of the country, which has brought peace to most parts of the nation as well. However, of course, since the Taliban regime took control once again in Afghanistan and the U.S. troop withdrawal happened, there's of course a spike in terrorist activities within the country, and there is concern regarding the use of Afghan soil against Pakistan and other territories as well. We have seen though that Pakistan has played a very important role in the Afghan peace process. It has played a significant role in its own society, including madrasa reforms, the merger of FATA, mainstreaming the less developed areas, education reforms, poverty alleviation programs, and other constitutional steps such as developing a national action plan and also terming the national security policies in terms of being more inclusive with regards to security and economic issues. So a lot of what has been done at home, of course, caters to the kind of needs that Pakistan had to face in the aftermath of this war. We have seen, of course, that the kind of attention or acknowledgement that Pakistan requires from the world community, unfortunately, hasn't really been given. And then when we see the kind of threats that we're still dealing with, it seems that we really need to be able to cater to the terrorist groups within our country even now, and there needs to be a lot of effort that needs to be put in for counter-terrorism, and we need perhaps more regional and international partners with regards to these efforts. So that's going to be our first segment today. In our second segment, we're going to be taking a look at what has been happening in Leicester in the UK, and there have been a lot of riots that have started off, unfortunately, since a match as part of the Asia Cup between India and Pakistan that took place in August, the 28th of August, in which India defeated Pakistan, after which we've seen a series of clashes and mobs coming out on the streets, especially over the weekend. We saw a large number of people coming out on the streets chanting Jai Shri Ram, and we have been seeing that they have been inciting violence. They also have targeted Muslims. They have also harassed and hurt some Muslim vendors on the street. There have been video footages coming on of people throwing bottles at the Muslim vendors on the side, and the police trying to control the mob. There is, of course, a lot of protests coming in from the Muslim community as well, who have been at the forefront of this particular mob attack, where we've seen large number of people chanting by and stomping across the main roads of the city. There has been some sort of control in terms of the police coming in huge numbers and taking control. There has been a lot of calls from both sides of the community leaderships talking about staying calm and not resorting to violence, and how violence is not an answer to anything. But then, of course, it's unfortunate that this is something that has started with such a petty issue and from a sports match which has gone to this level. We've seen it, of course, in other parts of the world, in various other sports as well, but this is something that is unfortunately also very closely linked as to what goes on within India as well, and the kind of rivalry that has existed in the way that Muslim minorities are treated within India as well. So there is a lot of issues and nuances involved in this particular protest, and how it has to be handled, how the Muslim community is reacting, and what needs to be done about it is of course something that we'll be focusing on in our segment today. For these two segments, as always, I've been joined in the studios by senior analyst Farooq Patafi, and we will soon be joined by our guests online for both the segments as well. But let me start with you, Farooq, with regards to the efforts that Pakistan has made over the years in terms of counter-terrorism. Of course, there was the global war on terrorism that Pakistan also took part in, and has been a major issue in terms of the involvement that we've had in the Afghanistan peace process, and even now the kind of terrorist threats that we're dealing with. It seems that when we talk about the global war on terrorism, there's a lot that Pakistan has also done at home and internationally, and that is still going on. But do you see the kind of acknowledgement that Pakistan deserves over the years for its efforts, and the kind of regional participation that we now need to see in counterterrorism efforts both at home and in the region?
Right, Sana, thank you very much for this question. I think that quick reminder to everybody who is watching that Pakistan has been fighting terrorism for past 20 years, especially after 9/11, when Pakistan took the decision to be part of war on terror, global war on terror. Since that time, Pakistan has been actually seeing a little bit of resistance from the extreme religious groups, right? But the matter actually flared up after the Red Mosque incident, and since then it has been snowballing until 2014, when we witnessed the deplorable and sad incident of APS Peshawar. After that, all the leaders actually came together, and that was for the first time after ages that we saw the kind of political consensus that was needed. After that, we have seen the war being fought against the terrorism in the country, which has been very successful. First, we had Zeb Azad, and then we saw Zadul Fasad. And that has been actually growing, and until recently, there came a moment when all the places where terrorists could hide had actually been abolished, right? After that, we have seen something which was a black swan incident, that was Afghanistan's government's collapse. After that, the kind of situation actually that emerged here. Remember that there were prisons which were housing many Taliban, Afghan Taliban, right? That was overturned by the Taliban, and then the TTP terrorists were also, inside that, and they got free as well. And they have been attacking Pakistan since then. Pakistani government has tried to actually engage in dialogue, because the new rulers of Afghanistan kept on insisting it. But after that, we have seen that gradually, despite concessions from Pakistan, there has been a return to the old ways, and we have seen the reports of people being kidnapped in the tribal areas, former tribal areas, even Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and elsewhere as well. And even in Islamabad, we have seen the resurgence of people who were actually behind the Red Mosque incident. So at this moment, because of what happened in Afghanistan, because of the state of affairs we are in, we have many crises. We are actually seeing some kind of resurgence, and naturally the government of Pakistan, the state of Pakistan, will have to act against them. And that kind of operations we have seen, particularly intelligence-based operations. In coming days, we are going to see how successful they are. But regarding international community support, remember that Pakistan is in a very rough neighborhood. We have India on one side, Afghanistan on another, and then there are other groups as well, and other countries which might be involved in supporting terrorism. So that becomes a huge challenge for Pakistan. I don't think we should be expecting the kind of solidarity that you were pointing to. I don't think it is coming anytime soon. But the developed powers of the world, perhaps they can take note and they can help.
All right, we'll talk more about this. Let us also welcome in the debate Syed Adnan Bukhari, who's joined us on telephone line. He's Assistant Professor, Homeland Security Program at Rabdan Academy, Abu Dhabi, UAE. Thank you very much, Mr. Adnan Bukhari, for joining us. Can you hear me?
Thank you very much, ma'am. I can hear you clearly.
Yes, I can. Mr. Adnan, when we take a look at the way that counterterrorism efforts across the world have evolved, especially in terms of the way that we've seen Afghanistan evolve over the years, the U.S. troop withdrawal, and then the kind of resurgence that we're seeing both in Pakistan, in Afghanistan as well, and elsewhere in the world, it seems that counterterrorism still very much is quite a relevant topic and an issue in most parts of the world. But when we take a look at the way that we've seen things evolve in terms of the global war on terrorism, it seems now that this is perhaps an effort which is more, which is happening more in pockets in certain parts of the world rather than a global campaign or a coordinated effort in the past. Do you think that is so, and that if it is, do we need to change that?
Yes, you are absolutely right. There has been a considerable decrease in interest of the Western world in the domain of counterterrorism, and especially within the ASPAC region. They have little interest in this region, especially with respect to the Taliban. They have the interest with regard to global terrorism only, and that only is confined to groups like Al-Qaeda and Daesh only. So with respect to the Taliban in Afghanistan or with respect to the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, they have little interest in it. So in a way you can say that now this war has become purely a Pakistan's war, and Pakistan has to fight this war with its own resources compared to the past when Pakistan had financial, military and political support from the West during the past 20 years. We won't see this thing happening again. What I can see in the future, actually, in the future coming 10 years.
Right, Mr. Adnan, and if that is the case, and we see the way that terrorist activities have spiked up within our country, and of course there is the constant concern of Afghanistan soil being used against Pakistan and other territories, we've seen that our efforts towards peace or dialogue haven't really amounted to much at the moment, especially with regards to the kind of facilitation that we expect or expected from the Taliban regime within Afghanistan. That hasn't been there as well, and it seems we have limited options proceeding forward. There is, of course, the option of dialogue that can still be continued. However, there's the issue with regards to the merger of FATA, which seems to be coming up again and again. And then there's military action and the kind of operations that have been done in the past. But we see resurgence in those areas as well. So moving forward, what do you think Pakistan needs to take a look at, and how does it need to proceed further?
And Buhari Sahab, I wish you could also actually underscore the variety of options, policy options that Pakistan might have at this moment.
Well, unfortunately, we are based in a very volatile region. This has been so since past 40 years now. Unfortunately, the success of the Taliban in Afghanistan has encouraged a plethora of all these groups that were based in Afghanistan and across the world, especially in the Middle East and Africa, to continue to fight with the hope that they can also win. This win of Afghanistan, of the Taliban in Afghanistan, has highly encouraged the Pakistani Taliban to continue to wage the same sort of struggle that the Afghan Taliban had been waging against the NATO troops and Afghan government in the past 20 years. So what we are seeing basically is that Taliban have stiffened their demands, if you look into it, and they are actually trying to put up the same demands that the Afghan Taliban has been putting to the world, including, for example, opening offices in outside countries. Like the Afghan Taliban had an office in Qatar. They still have an office in Qatar, by the way. So we see that we have very narrow options right now. The positive thing here is that the Pakistani society is opposed to the TTP, Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. And they are opposing tooth and nail the type of protest that we saw in the recent past, for example, in the recent months, and even 2 days ago in Swat, in Malakand division. Also the type of, for example, the type of tribal jirgas that we saw being held in Waziristan as well against Taliban's ingress into the area. This is something that is positive because people have seen the Taliban, their way of the Taliban, the Talibanization, they have lived under it.
Hang on. Sorry to cut you, Buhari Sahab. Sorry to cut you. But you are saying that the people on ground are actually opposing the TTP. But what we have seen recently, because the previous stint of TTP actually decapitated most of the tribal elders, since then the new breed that has come in, they are in support of reversal of FATA merger. And because of that, it seems that there seems to be some kind of resonance between what is being said by the TTP and what is being said by the tribal elders. Doesn't it actually worry you? And then political parties actually, there are political parties which are supporting the dialogue with TTP no matter what. So how do you actually figure that into the picture?
Well, the tribal elders' opposition to the FATA merger and Taliban's opposition to the FATA merger is there, but they are basically posing or basically putting up their arguments in two different ways. Taliban's arrival basically back into the tribal areas or in Swat as well would mean the end of the tribal elders. They don't want that one. If you even look at the JUIS, Jamiat Ulama-e-Islam Fazlur Rahman group, they are even opposing the return of the Taliban in a way. They have even pointed out, in fact, many of their clerics have recently been targeted in North Waziristan as well. So while they have a similar demand, but the tribal elders basically want this to be put up in a constitutional way. They are trying to put up a constitutional struggle. They have basically filed a case in the Supreme Court of Pakistan since past 4 years, which is under sub judice before the Supreme Court, and they want to wage a struggle like this. So when the Taliban will come back, they intend to replace the tribal elders. For example, I can tell you from my own primary source information that the Taliban in Waziristan have asked people to bring their matters to them in a Sharia court, in fact, and they have asked people to avoid the civil court that the government is recently establishing over there. Similarly, they have even warned the people that all those disputes that they have solved during their Talibanization era, before 2015, all those disputes that they have solved actually their decisions remain intact, and that needs not to be reversed again.
Right.
All these things actually goes against what the tribal elders stand for, or what the tribal institutions stand for.
Right, absolutely. Let me also welcome in the debate Mr. Hassan Khan, a senior journalist who's joined us. Thank you very much, Mr. Hassan Khan, for joining us on telephone line. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Right. Mr. Hassan, considering that when we take a look at the way that we need to deal with this, specifically the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan within the country, of course, we've tried various approaches, and one of them is, of course, dialogue that we're still trying to perhaps pursue, even though we haven't really had a breakthrough. It seems that when we take a look at this option, we've come to a point where it doesn't seem like there is going to be much compromise from the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan side. Of course, there is the issue of merger of Fatah, which is a big one, and we have reiterated again and again that we will not be giving in any extra constitutional demands. If that is the case, and if it seems that the dialogue isn't going anywhere, will we be resorting to military action, and do you think that that's going to solve the problem?
And Hassan Saab, what in your mind actually constitutes a breakthrough?
I think that at the moment, the situation in parts of KB and the former tribal area, now merged districts, I think there is a sort of confusion and there is a sort of fear among the people because Taliban have resurfaced themselves, particularly in Swat, in Bajawar, in Maman, and in southern districts like Waziristan, etc. So again, there's a type of confusion that on one side there are talks going on with the TTP, and there was a type of a ceasefire. They have announced a permanent ceasefire, and the government also. But suddenly, especially in this month of September, from the 2nd September, we saw a surge in Taliban attack. Initially, they gave it a name of defense, attacking the police in defense while defending themselves. And later on, you saw that in Swat, they attacked the former VDC member, Village Defense Committee members, and then they claimed it. So I think there is a type of a confusion. But the interesting part of the whole exercise is that neither the government has said that anything about stopping the talks, etc. Neither the Talib, neither the TTP, and none of the party has, I think, so far announced that the ceasefire will be no more intact. So I think on both sides, the government also want to keep the talks process going on, and the TTP also is interested to keep the talks going on. So there is a type of what we call it as urge on both sides that we have to resolve this issue, because the situation in Afghanistan, because it has a direct impact. If the talk process between the TTP and the government of Pakistan fail, it will have a bad impact inside Afghanistan for the Taliban government. And if simultaneously the ceasefire, because in case the ceasefire is, I think it is broken down and there is attack in Pakistan, so definitely Pakistan will take a punitive measure against the TTP.
Right, but Mr. Hassan Khan, you've talked about how there is a certain urge from both sides and a concern, but is that actually shared by the TTP as well? What is their urge over here?
And is it stopping any action from TTP? Because people are being kidnapped.
Yeah, I think that people are being kidnapped. The extortion money is being asked. Especially in the KP situation is worse. But as I said, that none of the party has publicly disowned or said something about the talks or suspension of talks or suspension of the ceasefire agreement. There is the urge for Taliban were. I think they have a problem. The problem for them is when the talks begin with the government of Pakistan, there was a type of attacks inside Afghanistan, and the TTP leaders and a number of TTP commanders were killed mysteriously inside Afghanistan. So I think there was a type of pressure on the TTP leadership that they are negotiating, and there is the killing is going on. Simultaneously, inside Pakistan also, there were attacks. So both the parties now, those who are negotiating on part of the government of Pakistan, when you met them, they feel that there is someone else who is exploiting this whole situation. On the other side, the TTP also feel that they are engaged with the government in talks, but inside Afghanistan, their commanders and colonels in Nangarhar and in southern Afghanistan, they are getting targeted and they are getting killed. So I think this
right, but Mr. Hassan Khan, I want to understand that when we talk about negotiations, it seems that at the moment the question of the merger of FATA is something that leaves no room for negotiations from both sides. Right?
No, I think this. Let me make one thing clear. I think this FATA merger, it has no doubt it is the demand of the TTP, and they are still sticking to it. But I think there are too many other things are also being discussed. It's not only that the talks are stuck over this only this one point, this merger, and the other point is
all right. What else is there?
And the second was to allow them to carry weapons. I think but
that's sort of related to the merger, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that is it was their basic demand. But I said this is not only this issue which is being discussed in the talks. There is a red line. The Pakistani government has communicated it that in no way, and it is not possible for the government to reverse the merger, because there is a constitutional amendment, two-thirds majority is needed, and almost all the human rights laws are extended to the former tribal district. So how can a government now retake those human rights laws? So I think for the government of Pakistan, they have communicated and they understood. When I talk to some of the people who were in negotiation, they say that they understand there are problems in this. But the talks are in initial stage. It's not.
Right. And we have to actually later, Hassan Saab, actually look into what actually constitutes early stage of dialogue.
Exactly.
But let me go back to Bukhari Saab. Bukhari Saab, wherever there has been a fight against terrorism, maybe in Northern Ireland, maybe in, for that matter, Sri Lanka, we have seen that every time there was a fight, eventually till the time the opposing party or the terrorists did not disarm, the dialogue could not move further. Do you think that this time perhaps the condition is different, because now we are talking about creating an exception for them to carry weapons within our merged areas?
Well, I think this is just one issue, and it's a small issue, but there are much larger issues that are at hand. For example, they want the military to withdraw from the tribal areas completely, including from the Pak-Afghan border. That's one of their demands. And they want the withdrawal of all the Pakistan army from the tribal areas, including the border, in a phased manner within 6 months actually. That's also one of their demands. One of their demands basically was that this merger basically needs to be ended or abolished once again. And FATA needs to be reinstated as it was previously. But their another demand is also that they need to be allowed basically to move freely. Another demand, which Pakistani government put to them is to disarm, in fact, and to disarm as a militant group, and maybe they can form a political party. They have not answered favorably on that. So arms is just a small thing actually. These are much bigger things at hand which they want
but
from the Pakistani government.
my humble question,
yes.
Bukhari, my
With
humble
regard
question
to-
was
Yes, yes.
primarily about only one
Yes,
thing.
yes.
I just wanted
With
to
regard
qualify
to-
that it amounts to ceding ground to them, right? And I'm
With
totally
regard
agreeing with
to-
what you're saying.
With regard to laying down weapons, for example, a ceasefire is kind of a laying down weapon. There was a ceasefire since May until many times, like until very recently, there has been ceasefire for all this time, during which they decided not to attack each other. But that does not reach to a conclusion. If they reach a conclusion, if there is an agreement, then there might, and one of the terms the Pakistani government is putting them is basically to disarm as well, which they have not reciprocated positively. So every group that we see, for example, the IRA, it actually disarmed, for example, or became a political party only after an agreement was reached. With regard to Sri Lanka, the LTTE, they never had an agreement. Instead, Sri Lankan government was able to eliminate them by force. You see, and that is the only successful counterinsurgency operation that we have seen in the history so far. The counterinsurgency so far has never been successful as far as we have seen in the human history so far, except this Sri Lankan case. And that was sheer brute force that they used, and in which basically thousands of people were also killed or displaced in those operations. Pakistan cannot definitely do that. You see, so that's why this is like a $1 million question about how we should go about dealing with the
No, I get that. But my question again was that before the start of this dialogue process, we saw that there was a state of affairs in which the government of Pakistan had an upper hand. When FATA had been merged and regular normal rules actually applied there. And now functionally, when we are talking about them actually carrying weapons wherever they want within FATA area and they can move around freely, is it not actually harking back to the age when the problem actually began? And is it not tantamount to actually ceding ground and throwing away your successes?
Sir, this situation actually changed. The situation improved after military operations pushed them out into Afghanistan. They were in a way, you can say, that restrained under the previous Afghan administration of Ashraf Ghani. After Ashraf Ghani was gone and Taliban took over power, we saw them becoming active again, and now entering into a cross-border incursions, and now finally they have physical presence within the tribal areas and so on. So what I'm trying to say here is that the situation that is deteriorating in the tribal areas and in Malakand division and overall KP as well, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well, is because of the change that we saw in Afghanistan in August 2021. This is basically you can say a spillover effect of that situation.
Right.
Had the situation not changed over there.
Right, absolutely, Mr. Bukhari. We're short on time, so I'll take the last question from Mr. Hassan Khan. When we take a look at the way that we have seen incidents of resurgence in various parts of earlier declared as free of terrorists and terrorist activities, it seems that, of course, the way that we have dealt with this issue in the past must be reanalyzed as well, and the kind of operations that have taken place, is that something that we need to proceed further as well? With regards to this strategy, how do you think that Pakistan should be taking a step forward in terms of its action on ground, also with regards to dialogue, but also with regards to military action, whether or not we can take a look at the way that we have seen past successes, also seeing resurgence now. And then considering the way that the National Action Plan had been formed, do you think it's comprehensive enough to be able to cater to that, to the way that we are seeing the resurgence at the moment? Mr. Hassan Khan, are you with us? Right. Mr. Bukhari, if you could take that question, please.
Yes, I can take this question. Actually, this is the same situation that Afghanistan faced. You see, we need cross-border cooperation with the Taliban in Afghanistan. The Taliban regime in Afghanistan to stop this thing. Pakistan alone cannot do it. You see, so unless and until the Afghan Taliban cooperate with Pakistan, we cannot stop the Taliban from incursions, because we have a huge border and it's a very intricate border. As you know, it's very hilly, and then Pakistan hands are full actually. We have a problem in Balochistan, we have right now floods, we have basically serious issues going on with India. You see a belligerent India on our border as well, so we cannot deal it single-handedly. You see, just kinetic force actually on the part of Pakistan by deploying troops and trying to stop them basically will not help actually in a lot of ways. Afghan Taliban has to help us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Sayyid Adnan Bukhari, and also Mr. Hassan Khan for being with us in the debate and talking to us regarding our counterterrorism efforts. Farooq, do you think that we've had a plan A, B, and C in place considering the situation we're in right now?
Yeah, we had all of them, and yet we opted. We seem to be opting for Plan Z, which is, it seems that reversing all the things that we did in the past.
Oh, really?
If you remember, amazingly, if you remember those days when Taliban were taking over Afghanistan, a lot of our friends used to say that the takeover is going to help Pakistan because then there will be a friendly government in Kabul, right? But since then, what have we seen? Instead of helping Pakistan, they seem to have become TTP's strategic depth. They go there, they sit there on their laurels, and then they come back and attack us. So the question at this moment is, whosoever actually, factored in Afghan government or Afghan takeover, they have to actually come forward and provide answers. Why is it that the concessions were made so quickly that you removed so many checkposts all of a sudden, and that all these elements are there and they're harassing the local population? If that is not done, remember, there was a joint session, there was a briefing in Parliament. It happened after the approval of Parliament. When is the Parliament going to respond to these questions? That is my question. Right
Absolutely. That's an incredibly important aspect, and we really need to take a look at that. Let me welcome in the debate now Mr. Hamid Khan, who's a senior analyst. Thank you very much for joining us in the debate and joining us for our second segment with regards to what is going on in Leicester right now, the kind of clashes that we have seen over the weekend that initiated from a sports match between India and Pakistan, in which India defeated Pakistan. That was back in August, 28th of August. And we've seen that on this weekend there were large mobs out on the streets chanting Jai Shri Ram, and also making it difficult for Muslim street vendors to be there in peace. When we take a look at what's going on with regards to Leicester, Dr. Hamid, of course there is sports rivalry all over the world. We've seen kind of clashes in other forms of football or soccer as well. But the way that we see this being also having the nodes of India, Pakistan, and with the way that things are going on within India against the Muslim minority, it takes, of course, a different tinge as well. Considering all of this, how do you think the situation initially has been handled by the people, on both sides, the leadership, for the Muslims and the police as well? Because there's, of course, mixed reports coming in with regards to what people are saying.
Thank you very much, Sana. Yeah, actually, I mean, because I live in northwest of England, and it is only about a 40 minutes drive where I live in. Leicester is not far, and I know very well that area myself. I'll tell you, I mean, the Indian propaganda and typical Indian media is again doing a very false, fabricated propaganda about the whole matter. Actually, it is a matter not only started from the cricket match, it is Hindutva ideology, RSS ideology supporters are doing so many, I should say, incitements in the area for the last 4 or 5 months, and they are trying to use the same tactics what they are using inside India against the Muslim minorities. I'll tell you a fact about the Leicester is Muslim. Majority of the Muslims in Leicester are from Indian Gujarat, Surat, and other parts of India, and mostly the Muslims from there. Pakistani Muslims are living there as well. But as a matter of fact, it is the Indian Hindutva ideology who's inciting the whole matter, incitement, and who's giving aggression to the community, and they are trying to impose on Muslim majority areas like their authority and majority, and that's what even the Leicester police has said, that we are trying to maintain the peace, but there is no evidence of so much propaganda what Indian media is saying. As the matter of fact, they have turned it into a Pakistan-India rivalry, while it is actually Muslims and Hindus, I should say, conflict, or I should say the tensions, and Muslims are feeling very insecure due to all this Jai Shri Ram march past and other things. And I think British police is going to take a proper action, and they are going to bring the perpetrators to the justice.
Right. Dr. Ahmed, I'm glad that you actually pointed out the involvement of Hindutva elements. Jai Shri Ram is particularly their, clear slogan, and it is a unique identifier that tells us that India's current government's supporters are there, and they are trying to stoke some kind of violence or some kind of disagreement among the communities. Regarding Hindu community and Muslim community in UK. Correct me if I'm wrong, they have been actually existing, they are coexisting quite peacefully and complementing each other as well. So this must be an outlier. Correct me again if this is my impression, but it seems that it is a recent phenomena. Was it happening a few months ago when Priti Patel was the Interior Secretary? Because she, amid other things, she was thought to be a very effective, Interior Secretary. So what has changed?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely right, Mr. Patasi. I should appreciate your up-to-date knowledge about, Priti Patel's involvement in the whole situation, because she has given so many leverages to the Indian citizens towards the immigration and as coming to the India, that it has given a big discrimination within the Indian British immigration policy, and that has been questioned at many platforms, even on in a British society as well, from the British organizations, and exactly that is one of the reasons. On the other hand, the impression, whether it was border bill or other bills, that they are trying to corner Muslims in living in the Britain. They are trying to, making the laws tougher for the Muslims, and that was clearly efforts from Priti Patel, and that has been very much criticized among all the social activists, other than the Muslims as well. And I think that now the new Prime Minister Liz Truss is not going to continue Priti Patel as her Home Secretary, and it is going to change the situation. But I believe that the Hindus being very much, I should say, encouraged and supportive, and try to do anything against the Muslims, and Pakistan is living there. But now, I think they have to change what the parameters they did for the Indians and for the Muslims. It is not going to work anymore. And I think it is, they were living in harmony. There is no doubt about it. When it comes to the...
Home Secretary has changed. Is it not true? Suella Braverman is now the Home Secretary. Is it not?
Exactly.
She's also part Indian, but still, there might be a shift in policies. Over to you, sir.
Of course. She is much better than Priti Patel, because Priti Patel is known to be very anti-Muslim and anti-Pakistan, and she showed in her policies as well.
Right. Dr. Hamid, when we take a look at the situation in Leicester, there is, of course, concerns being raised from the Muslim community as well. There were video footages coming out where the police was also trying to push back the Muslim population who came out after there was, of course, a lot of incitement coming in from the mob that was out in the streets. When we take a look at the situation, of course, I understand that the important part is to be able to protect any violence from erupting and to take the situation under control. But in terms of the way that this particular issue is viewed, when we see any sort of riot or any sort of mob violence out in the streets, there is, of course, an issue of who's inciting what, and then when we take a look at who's responsible, it seems that perhaps the way that the situation needs to be handled should also be able to reflect that. Do you think that that was at all possible in this situation?
I think so. To be honest, there was a crisis of even availability of police personnel in that area as well, and they had to call extra, police officers from the other counties to control the mobs and to control the protesters. Actually, I believe that, in Britain, normally they try police try to control everybody, and they, regardless of whosoever they are belong to, and they wanted them not to clash with the Hindu protesters, which was rightly so. But as a matter of fact, there will be again a complete inquiry, and if there will be any unfair treatment by the British police towards any community, they will bring to justice. But
right.
at the moment, the police is trying to maintain the peace.
Is it under the norms and the legalities of the area for what we've seen in the video footages for mobs to march on the streets and chant Jai Shri Ram? Is that okay? Because that wasn't being stopped.
No, not at all. Not at all. Rather, I will tell you, I have spoken to few of the eyewitnesses, and they were saying that the most of the, these chanting people, they were not even local from Leicester. They came from others, and they came with a proper planned protest, and they were proper planned, from different other cities. So it is not that local, rather the Hindutva BJP supporters gathered purposely to show some kind of strength, or to show some kind of, to give the fear to the Muslims living in Leicestershire. So it is a planned, steps taken by the BJP to harass Muslims living in Leicestershire.
Moving forward,
I believe that, let me tell you one thing. The first approach for the police and the local authorities is to keep the peace, maintain the peace, and secondly, they will point out who were the culprits, and they will bring to the justice. And the most important is that the local, the activists, local, representatives from the both communities, Muslims and Hindus, should sit together and bring the harmony back. Otherwise, if it spreads all over UK, it could be very catastrophic for the UK Britain government and for the South Asian living in the Britain, where there is a population of more than 3 million South Asians are living in the Britain. So it will be very dangerous if it spreads across UK. So that is the point where they have very much concern that the matter should be resolved within the Leicestershire.
Right. Farooq, when we take a look at the situation, of course, there is what's going on in Leicester, but the way that it's also viewed and perceived in other parts of the world, and the kind of impact that it's going to have elsewhere as well. What sort of issue do you think that this is going to be locally?
Right, Sarah, it actually, this whole episode actually stinks to high heavens, and it actually gives you the feeling of what I've been calling the BJPs or RSSs, or for that matter, HSS, that is the European and American, counterpart of that, their shock and awe policy.
Exactly.
What do? Is actually they target communities where there might be a couple of hotheads, right? And they actually go and stage this guerrilla marketing tactics, where they would actually culminate. They would seek some kind of confrontation. When there's any kind of response, then it becomes both-sidism. Because of India's prevalence, India's own media, which is very strong, and then Indian supporters in Western media as well, then it is projected as the fault or fight of two communities, not of a gang of hoodlums attacking peaceful citizens, right? And then what happens is that these videos are played repeatedly in the local circuits, their cables, elsewhere, and people are motivated to go out and attack the other side. And through that, they actually create this kind of an animus, which is going to last for long. That's why India was one of the first people who desperately clung to the idea of clash of civilizations, because they want Muslims gone, and they want then Christians gone, then they want Jewish people gone. So that's why these Hindutva bandits are actually doing what they have been doing it for quite some time. Unfortunately, now it is spreading to the West, and if the Western governments don't take note of this and put a stop to this, it is going to increase. And this hardliner stage, remember back in 1970s, our policies were regarding Afghanistan. Because of that, there was a lot of violence internationally. Now, what India is spreading, and because India is patient zero, it is going to cause another generation to suffer, and if you don't actually stop it, because Hindu or saffron terrorism is a reality, and it is not going to stop.
Absolutely. Dr. Hamid, we're almost out of time. Anything you'd like to add before we conclude?
I would just say one thing that, I mean, this is the time when Muslims living in the Britain, they have to be very united, and they have to, whatever evidence they have, whatever, supporting evidence they have to give it to the authorities so that the police can take proper action. That's the only way, and this will happen soon. Yeah.
Document, document, document. Whenever possible,
Exactly.
document the incidents of microaggressions, attacks on you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much,
Exactly.
Dr. Hamid Khan, for being with us and being a part of the
Thank
debate.
you.
And thank you, Farooq, for being
Always.
with me on the show. Of course, it's extremely important for people to be able to protect themselves and to be able to raise their voice against whatever involves is being talked about. And it's important for the world to be able to realize and not be tolerant of any such behavior coming in from anybody. That's all that we have from the debate. See you tomorrow.